Richard Harris, Cromwell. I see that, in fact, physically you're playing in warts and all, but yes. Are you, in fact, playing in warts and all?
What does that mean?
Well, in other words, are you playing him as hero?
I don't think... That's the one thing that I sort of strove to avoid in the script. I think that the audience at the end of the movie should be able to... I think we should have a split audience at the end if the movie is going to be successful. I think we should have half the audience saying the king was right and half saying Cromwell was right. But the interesting thing about Cromwell was that how little the English really know of the true man. Indeed, the Irish and the Catholics as well. But I think that he was a much maligned man in England history, as in English history, and that over the past, I don't know, years, it's been my ambition to play him since 1959, when I got this script first, and got Irving finally to do it. I was studying his part for a couple of years, off and on, and I've sort of discovered that the legend of Cromwell was built out of royalist propaganda. And now the people are beginning to uncover the truth of the man, the greatness of the man, which is interesting. I read that Prince Charles, in fact, in one of the newspapers some weeks ago, said that he was brought up to believe that Charles I was a marvelous man and that Cromwell was a sort of hypocritical monster. But now, on the studying of the parts and the period, he reversed that opinion, which is interesting enough.
Talking about the way you're playing it, in 1963, I think, when you did Diary of a Madman on stage, you played very much larger than life. You were not a little person playing a little part in little ways. Are you playing Cromwell larger than life?
It's difficult to answer that question. I think that I have studied the part very carefully, and I have read the Carlyle book on his letters and his speeches. And they were quite dynamic, and people's opinions of him, which were quite extraordinary, that he had a tremendous power, but he also had a great gift of disappearing in company, that for quite a while you wouldn't sort of remember who he was. But then when he had a point of view to say, he said it with tremendous economy of words and with great power, and the one sort of remembered him after. So I'm trying to get that into the part. And also the man himself, he was a great family man, loved his family, loved the farm, and loved wine, loved good music. He was a locksmith by hobby. And all these things are interesting enough to get underneath the man. I think it's very dangerous if one goes overboard. Acting techniques are extraordinary. I think that the technique that one uses on the stage is far different than what one would have to use in cinema. So one has to keep back a bit.
But you've gone to considerable lengths with this part. For example, I know that you've quite deliberately broken your voice.
Yes, I thought that my voice was too light for the part. And also that there were so many powerful speeches in it, and I didn't think my voice had that kind of strength. Also, as against Guinness's voice, which is terribly light. I thought the best thing I could do was to sort of break it. So in Spain, the first day in Spain, I was on top of a mountain and screamed and roared for 2 hours. And now every day I do voice exercises to keep it like this, which means I've ruined my recording career, but there we are.
But isn't it in fact very dangerous to do this? I mean, isn't there a danger that you might lose your voice entirely?
I never think of the future. I think of the present, and it's right now for this part, and that's the most important thing to me.
Can you afford to do that?
I mean, financially or physically?
Financially and physically.
Well, if financially, I suppose I can't record again till October, till this movie finishes. I'm hoping to get my voice back. If I don't get it back, then I'll lose a certain amount of revenue from the recording world, but I won't miss it very much.
You could also lose certain kinds of part, couldn't you? If your voice
didn't
come back.
Well, yes, I suppose I'll have to go on playing Cromwell all my life.
True or false, you've acquired the reputation of being something of a hellraiser. Now, how much of that is a newspaper fabrication, would you say?
Well, I'd be a terrible hypocrite if I said it was all. I think really, I do live, must say, a rather hectic, wild life. I get very restless if I'm in one place too long. But some of it has been over-exaggerated, I think. My God, I shouldn't say that. I don't know, really.
For example, recently in a Sunday newspaper, there was a report of a sort of continental jet plane binge that you took, which lasted several days.
Well, it wasn't really, because you see, then again, you see that the story that was finally printed was the story that the readers of that particular newspaper would only want to read. But in fact, it was a terrific trip. It was, despite the fact that there was a large variety and a large scale of things that we did, they just took an aspect of it. I mean, Wolf Mankiewicz, who was very brilliant and very bright and very marvelous guy, I think. And we had the most fantastic discussions about religion and politics and poetry and sex and man's place in the world and the woman's place in the world, the woman's place in the man's life and vice versa. Which, you know, had it been maybe another newspaper, it would have taken on a whole different thing. That would have taken probably the sort of primary aspects of the trip. Or because that particular newspaper chose to take an aspect of it. But I can't deny that any of the reports on the newspaper were not true.